Have you ever felt like you're just playing a role in your own life? Well, today we're going to unpack a story about a guy who did everything right. I mean, he followed every rule, did everything he was supposed to do, only to find himself completely, totally lost. It's this quiet battle that honestly so many of us face, the one between the life everyone else expects for us and the one we're actually meant to live.
So for this guy, the whole journey started with this one single, really powerful lesson that he learned as a kid. It was supposed to be a simple rule for getting by in the world, one that promised safety, acceptance, you know the drill. And it ended up becoming the invisible blueprint for his entire life.
And that lesson was this: approval matters more than purpose. And look, this wasn't just some casual idea. It became his entire operating system. The applause from the crowd, the pat on the back, was just so much louder, so much more valuable than that quiet whisper in his own heart. And that single belief, well, it set the course for a life that wasn't even his.
So, how did this actually play out in his life? Well, his world basically became this constant chorus of other people's voices. You know, all this well-meaning advice from family, friends, society, each one adding another layer of ink to the map of the life he was supposed to live.
The first voice told him, study this. A path was picked out for him, not based on what made him curious or excited, but on what was considered, practical and respectable. This was the first major piece of his life that he just kind of handed over to someone else.
And then, of course, came the next command. Choose that career. The practical degree led to the respectable job, a job that made perfect sense to everyone around him but felt completely foreign to him. Just another brick laid in a wall he wasn't even building for himself.
You know, the unwritten rule behind all this advice was pretty simple. Don't take risks. The fear of failure, of trying something new and maybe not succeeding, was just woven into every single suggestion. It was a philosophy of caution that just slowly, quietly starved his ambition.
And then came the knockout punch, the most powerful weapon of all. The idea that people will laugh. The fear of being judged completely silenced any tiny desire he had left to stray from that well-trodden path. He learned to fear what other people thought way more than he feared his own future regrets.
So, he followed the map. He did everything he was told, and by every external measure, he was a huge success. But this brings us to the real paradox of his life. What happens when you achieve a dream that was never yours to begin with?
He had it all: the stable career, the respectable life. I mean, he ticked every single box on society's checklist for what a successful life looks like. From the outside looking in, it was a picture-perfect existence.
But here's the thing, right? There was this massive disconnect between how things looked and how they actually felt. The outside world saw success. They saw all the trophies. But what he felt on the inside was this growing, nagging emptiness. A quiet, persistent feeling that something vital was just missing.
And here's why. His whole life was built on safe choices. Every single step was planned by somebody else, but in avoiding all the risky detours, he'd also avoided anything that felt truly meaningful. He had a life full of decisions, but not a single one that felt like it was really his own.
But you can't just ignore a feeling like that forever. Eventually, that emptiness started to speak up, not in a loud rebellion, but as this quiet, nagging question that would only pop up when the noise of the outside world finally died down.
You know those moments, right? Late at night, after a long day of playing a role and meeting everyone's expectations, when you're finally alone with your own thoughts. For him, this was when that carefully built facade really started to crack.
And this was the question that haunted him in those quiet moments. Is this really my life? It was such a simple question, but it was absolutely devastating. Was this carefully curated collection of other people's decisions, was it really him? So what do you think he did? He did what so many of us do. He became an expert at pretending. He got really good at smiling. That phrase, "I'm fine," became his shield, protecting everyone else from his inner turmoil and honestly probably protecting himself from having to really face it.
So yeah, years went by in this quiet state of pretending, until one totally ordinary day, just walking home from work, a completely normal moment triggered this extraordinary and really painful reflection. The moment of truth had finally arrived.
He was just walking and he glanced out a shop window, and in his reflection he saw someone else staring back. It wasn't the man he was now, it was the boy he used to be, the person he was before the world started telling him who he was supposed to become.
And who was that kid? Oh man, that kid was just buzzing with curiosity. His mind was overflowing with his own ideas. He had all these questions, the kind of questions that society had told him were too impractical, too weird, too risky to even ask. In that reflection, he saw everything he had traded away.
And in that moment, it just hit him like a ton of bricks. Following everyone's advice had worked. In a way, it saved him from criticism, from failure, but the price was astronomical. It had cost him his identity. He'd traded his authentic self for the safety of approval.
But you know what? This painful realization wasn't the end of his story. It was actually a new beginning. It was the moment he finally got it. The only way forward was to stop looking outside for a map and start looking inside for a compass.
And that's really what identity is all about, isn't it? It's not just some label. It's your internal guidance system. It's that quiet inner compass that points toward your true direction, especially when it looks totally different from everyone else's.
So, how does this journey back to yourself even start? It's not with some huge dramatic life overhaul. It's actually way simpler. Step 1, just stop. Stop living on autopilot according to someone else's plan. Step 2, listen. Start tuning in to that quiet inner voice again. And step 3, start small. Just take one small, brave step in the direction it's pointing.
I think the most important thing to remember here is this. Finding your direction is a process. It's not some overnight revelation. But all the power is in that very first move. The real journey, the one that matters, begins the moment you finally stop walking down a path that was never yours to begin with.
And all of this really leaves us with just one question to think about. As you move through your own life, think about the choices you're making, the path you're on, and just ask yourself, whose advice are you following? Is it theirs or is it yours?